drizzly, but kind of very pleasant. Northwest of Ireland today, a little bit of rain. Nothing that wouldn't help inspire you. There's a kind of a sense of poetry in the air. And I hope you're all keeping well. A couple of videos today. The first one I want to talk about is I was watching have you ever seen those movies A Quiet Place? There's two of them. The second one has Cillian Murphy in it. They're both quite good. They're both very good, actually. And I was thinking about them yesterday as I'm on another Facebook ban for really nothing this time. Just talking about, HERD immunity. And it's well known that I have borderlines who stalk me on that, reporting everything. But aside from that, I was watching that movie. I was thinking about that movie, those two movies, A Quiet Place, and in specific how the aliens function. They arrive on Earth, but they're blind. They can't see in our spectrum, or whatever. They have no eyes. Or maybe they do have eyes, I can't remember, but they can't see in our spectrum. So they detect everything by by noise. So basically, if you want to stay alive, you have to stay quiet. And they can be anywhere, in the countryside, in the city, in the town, in old factories, anywhere. And as soon as you make a loud noise, they will come for you. And it's basically about a family who have developed a set of skill sets to kind of survive the best they can. And they use things like an old guitar amp to distract, using feedback to annoy the thing so they can make an escape. But they are killable with a shotgun. Now, what I was thinking about, cancel culture and, fact checkers and community standards on social media and the internet in general, and the censorship. And it's incredible to think that we live in a world today where we're actually fighting for freedom of speech. It's quite disturbing. When you sit back for a second, the first thing is it's quite disturbing that we have to actually fight for our freedom of speech, something that we in the West always took for granted. But added to that, to see the likes of the President of the United States and the EU Commission openly endorsing restrictions on free speech, I never thought we would arrive at this place. It's incredible when you think about where we are compared to, say, we were 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Now, these fact checkers, cancel culture, community standards type, all on the left, are basically the new Puritans, okay? But what they remind me are those aliens in that A Quiet Place series of movies, that if you say something that's considered hate speech or wrong think or needs fact checkers or what they deem fake news, this creature will fly out of the abyss and shut you down. So you have to sort of say quiet. So we're kind of living in a quiet planet where we can have conversations, but we have to make sure we don't say words that will trigger these entities, these beasts, in community standards, in fact checkers, in Snopes, in cancel culture, in woke general culture, to fly out of the woodwork and attack you and shut you down, basically kill you, digitally kill you, where the aliens in The Quiet Place did it physically. But believe me, they're on their way to doing this, the latter as well. And the whole thing was, well, you have to restrict behavior sometimes because people might issue words that are racist or hateful or slanderous, and I totally get all that. But the fact is that you can't even talk about HERD immunity now, or the needlecraft, or anything like that, and you're shut down. It's just like the old Voltaire thing. If you want to know who rules over you, find out who you can't criticize. And then what can't we criticize? The needlecraft makers, the whole thing behind that. And their fact checkers, their aliens, their beasts will come out from the abyss and shut you down. And so you have to stay quiet. So you have to maintain speech that does not alert these these unspeakable entities from the abyss in fact checkers, community standards, and etc., to come out and tear you down. So we're actually the film, the two movies, A Quiet Place, is a perfect metaphor for where we're living now in terms of free speech. And like I said, to see someone like the President of the United States not only openly support and endorse this, but also decree people who want restoration of free speech, and in the United States, the First Amendment, or in the European Commission, the restoration of, the classic, European Enlightenment concept of free speech, they're treated like enemies of the state. Uh, Biden actually came out and said that the people who just want the freedom of speech in America, the people who just want a restoration of traditional American constitutional values, are domestic terrorists. Now this is again, I've been telling you that since April 2020, our national governments, and it's not just the USA, it's all my country, it's Europe, wherever you're living, Canada especially, the national governments have openly declared war upon the citizenry, and they have decided. See, the war isn't with Russia. Well, in fact, no. The thing with the Russian thing is a nightmare for them because it distracted them from the primary objective, and that is the actual conquest of their own people, the citizens in their country, the customary people. But that's the war was declared. Now, the war was planned from the moment two things happened when President Trump became elected in 2016, and also Brexit. This was the political machine, the career politicians, the bureaucrats, the politburos, the oligarchs, the plutocrats, all deciding that ordinary people are the greatest threat to democracy, because they're the only ones that actually know what democracy is. And so therefore they were declared the greatest threat to democracy, what they now have reframed as democracy. And they began Operation Annihilate the Citizenry in all countries at that moment on. And it was all done, they made their move in April 2020, and that's when that was their Operation Overlord, their Operation Barbarossa. They actually, with the implementation of the lockdowns, that was the first attack upon the citizenry. You have to understand this. Your government hates you to the core of your being. All the politicians and all the parties, there are very few good guys out there, very few good people out there who still, and when they are there, they're attacked and destroyed in the media. They have to be like people like governors of very powerful states like Florida, who have a strong backing of the people in the state. Otherwise, in a constitutional democracy, just like most European countries, we're in grave danger at the moment, where our governments are out to get us. And if you haven't figured that out now, there's something seriously not right with you. Now, or you haven't been paying attention. And, I'll do another, an emerging mythos video after this one, but I don't want to get too much in that stuff now. But it's, again, as above, so below. It's being reflected everywhere. I've been making reference to the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. That's actually kind of like an archetypal reflector that's bouncing back at us to show us the pathological. She's representing the pathological forces of the control system. It's gaslighting, it's lies, it's borderline behavior, it's sadistic viciousness. At the same time, he represents, with his drunkenness, Johnny Depp, with his drunkenness and his own personal demons, which doesn't make him an evil person. Everyone has demons. That he lost himself, and he basically allowed this entity, this borderline, to take over his life and destroy it for a while. And what we're seeing in our own daily lives is the same thing. There's no way in hell that Biden got the most popular president when he was elected. Anyone who believes that, just stay away from them. They're not right in the head, and just like he isn't. Now, when you lie in the bed in the morning and you have these kind of flights of fancy, and let's be honest, the blood queen behind all this, as I spoke the other day, is Hillary Clinton. She is the one organizing. She is the Countess Bathory implementing the war against ordinary people, because she blames the ordinary people for her not being the emperor of planet Earth. Now, I don't even believe that Hillary Clinton is human. I don't even know what she is. I do believe, there's some other consciousness in there. If it's from another dimension, but it's basically, when I look at her, the one animal that pops into my mind is a praying mantis. That when she talks and everything. And there was a picture of her came out the other day where she was wearing this red dress, and there was this, you could see, and that gentleman that makes those excellent videos, Sanity for Sweden, that gentleman in Sweden had spoken about how, this is what they're really like. She was being served by her slave, and well, maybe that's a bit condescending to that man, but he was a black man. But he was like tucking in her dress like a servant, like a peasant, and it had this old time regal royalty kind of vibe about it. And then she just, this toxic face of hers, and the cascading evil that comes off its being. And like I said, I see a praying mantis. That's when I see her, that's what I see, a praying mantis, like an interdimensional alien praying mantis, not a million miles from, like, the queen of if you think of those aliens in A Quiet Place as being like bees, she's like the queen of them, and she's the one who's leading it all. And I really do believe that Biden's deterioration is something to do with her. She's killing him, either through having people in the White House do something, poison him or whatever. And also, I believe at the same time, she's transferring her consciousness into Kamala Harris. Because the moment Biden dies and Kamala Harris, or he's removed from office, and this is her plan to get into she's unelectable. Let's just face facts, she's completely unelectable. That most Americans would voted for a guy with a bad hairpiece over her. And we all know the reason why she lost that election was that famous "we came, we saw, he died" video. Even sane democratic people looked at that and go, there's no way is she allowed in the White House. No way should she be allowed. But so she's unelectable, but she still has to become Empress of Earth. And it's almost like, if you to put it into a science fiction movie, she's murdering Biden slowly while transferring her consciousness into Kamala Harris. This is why Kamala Harris is in charge of the faculties. It's all they laughing and cackling and giggling. She hasn't fully absorbed into her. And something will happen, like, when, I could just imagine, like, we were to make a science fiction film of it, we'd have, like, the moment that Biden died, you'd have this Hillary Clinton praying mantis on top of his corpse in the White House, extracting the last of his life force, and then jumping off or cackling like Kamala Harris and running over to the place where her lover and the person her and Bill Clinton betrayed, Vince Foster, killed himself, and like a psychopath gnawing the soil where he was murdered. Like they always, the way psychopaths always and serial killers always turn to the scene of the crime when she first got into power. But that's what she reminds me of, an interdimensional praying mantis demon alien. And she's moving into Kamala Harris's body. So when, Scratch and Sniff Joe dies, she can become the Empress of planet Earth by proxy. And, you laugh at yourself thinking these things up. But did you ever think we'd live in a world where you weren't allowed to have discussions about many things because they were deemed not for talking about? And there were entire massive organizations devoted to the annihilation of free speech. I mean, did you ever think you'd see the day when corporations were controlling what you can and can't say? Big IT, big tech companies. And is there hope? Well, of course, there's always hope. And we're having hope. I think right now, woke, like all psychopathic institutions and entities, have overplayed its hand. And where it's overplayed its hand in two things right now. The first one was Amazon's Lord of the Rings Tavistock version. That was the first one. And the second one, and it's become very apparent now, was Disney in Florida. That Disney CEO showed how, I was talking the other day about mediocrity being king. He's not fit to run that company. He's clearly mediocre. And he caved to a few purple-haired and blue-haired freaks having hissy fits in the office, and basically betrayed all his other staff. And as a result, Disney, which once had a special place in Florida in terms of not paying taxes and stuff, is in a bad way, and lots of people are saying they're not going to go there anymore. And this may be the end of woke. And I'll tell you, I'll give you some good examples of that. Woke, the Roe v. Wade thing in the U.S. was the holy sacrament of political correctness, left cultural Marxist ideology. It was the holy sacrament. And it was the one which all other countries hung their own version of Roe v. Wade on it. Now, Roe v. Wade wasn't... It was some weird constitutional thing that was passed by liberal judges in the U.S., but it was never good law. It was like the Blasphemy Act in Ireland in 2009. That was eventually struck down because it wasn't good law. It was basically crazy. Now, and it was implemented by corrupt Irish politicians who got backhanders from Gulf state Arab mullahs, and one insidious creature in particular, and the Irish side, I mean, and the same thing with the Roe v. Wade thing. Now, the Roe v. Wade thing was always kind of going to be struck down eventually, because it was, like I said, it was always bad law, and the people who are screaming, they're in states where you can still get a termination of pregnancy, so they're not going to be affected by it. But it's like the way the wokies want into the classroom. They're obsessed with children. It's like you cannot if you go to any NGO involved in anything to do with sexual rights, transgender rights, anything, they're obsessed with getting in the classroom, and the younger the better. And it's all nonsense, of course. And you'll see people say it's really important we teach children about, anal sex. It is? What? Huh? What? Greg Moffat and I were talking about this yesterday. What? No, it's not. It's really important. That's not important at all. That's not even important really for adults, unless they're into that. But this is what you're dealing with. This is what you're dealing with. And it may be ending. There's some great signs, and the first one is big tech, the usual woke organizations, with the exception of Facebook, which is dying anyway. None of them got on their soapbox the other day and made proclamations about how evil Roe v. Wade was. And the reason why they didn't do that is because what happened to Disney in Florida. They're on the run now. They're getting scared, and they're realizing, like a hotel owner down in Limerick, after he succumbed to a thug, bully, freedom of speech killer academic at Limerick University, and cancelled an event that was been held down there, that woke will get you broke, and people are no longer putting up for it. They're not putting up with these they're cancelling back cancel culture, and as a result, ironically, cancel culture is cancelling itself. And so the big tech company said nothing. A wall of absolute silence. It was that kind of silence that was deafening, and that's a very important thing. That's a really, really big deal. Secondly, that even the mainstream media portrayed the ones who were screaming in the streets over it as being mentally ill. Because now, even if you're kind of liberal-minded, which I guess I still am. I mean, if they've destroyed the goalposts, so they pushed me into a place I never would not wanted to be, but I'm not in them. They've changed the goalposts. But if you were liberal-minded like me, and traditionally, to look at these people, you realise these are all nut jobs. These are all sickos. They're obsessed with murdering babies. That's all they care about. They want to either slew them or screw them. I mean, that in fact, that's a great mantra for all wokies, SJWs, lefties and liberals and progressives, their attitude towards children is slew them or screw them. That's all they want to do with them. They want to slew them or they want to screw them. And that's because they're not human. These people, they're not. That's why when you look at all the, you go to TikTok and you go to that what's his name, Odin's Men or Odin's channel, and he shows all the videos of the Dems of TikTok and the liberals of TikTok and the progressives of TikTok, and they're all distorted and twisted. Their faces, they're all ugly and hideous. They're aliens. They're not human beings. They're part of the same. They're the foot soldiers of what Clinton, the giant praying mantis, is. They're the lower. They're possessed. They're not. They're not us. They're not us, and they're obsessed with destroying the human race, with extracting as much energy as they can from it through things like cancel culture and paedophilia. That's, and just upsetting people who just want to be left alone. And it's as clear as day now. You can see it as clear as day. So that was a good one. Another one that happened was American universities have 1 million less people enrolling in US universities now compared to last year. Now that is fantastic, because this will mean that these universities are now going to be suffering for producing so-called academics, who say there's no such thing as a man or a woman or a chromosome. And it's converse has been shown that the same number has been picked up in trade schools and technical colleges. So the university system has been destroyed by these cultural Marxist professors and academics. I mean, I told you about the story I saw the other day. It was about the relocation of Dublin Bay. It was on the RT website, and it was absolutely one of the most bizarre pieces of psychobabble I'd ever read. Basically, if they relocate Dublin Port north of the city, this academic woman from, I think it was UCD, said that it would bring back typhoid in the city. People would die of typhoid, like they did in the 1700s, and without any evidence. It was just like, it was pure psychobabble. And then I went to, they had a link to her Twitter page, and I went there, and the first thing she's talking about is her mental health issues. And this is the kind of academics that are out there. People who are unhinged and psychotic. And people are going to expect that their kids or the kids, the young people themselves, are going to pay money to go through 6 or 7 years of that, listening to a lunatic. And it's going on everywhere. That's why 1 million left. And you'll see it in Ireland and other countries, more and more people, young people, will say, I'm not going to university. I want to be employable. I want to actually have a skill that I can market in life. I don't want to, rather than denying that chromosomes don't exist. This is what we're up against. And that's so there's real good science happening at the moment, huge science, and that the thing has turned around, and no one's defending Joe Biden anymore than the mentally ill, and even the whole thing with Russia, even that. People are like, how did we get? Even like sane liberals are going, how did we even get to this point? What have we got to do with this? I mean, remember, that whole war exists for two reasons. Empress praying mantis Clinton wants her revenge on humanity by controlling it or destroying it. And also, they bribed Joe Biden's son and his laptop. It's incredible. Basically, the establishment have such a hatred of the human race that they're willing to call the world a nuclear global war over their sickening hatred of ordinary people. Now, those of you who are going to the elections from now on, that still go to vote, you remember that every single politician hates your guts. And don't give me this thing like, the left-wing parties are the people. In Ireland, there's an openly outright Bolshevik party called People Before Profit. They're really basically the old Socialist Worker Party with a new name. And of course, they're made up of like upper middle class people. There's not a working class person inciting them. But Richard Boyd Barrett, their leader, yesterday in the Irish Parliament said that we can kill two birds with one stone. We can solve the housing crisis by implementing the 1939 Emergency Act and seizing property and giving it to Ukrainian immigrants, refugees, other immigrants, and homeless Irish people. Now, that is out and out Bolshevism. That is the classic 1918 Bolshevik carry-on that happened in the Soviet Union. And it won't. And if they get away with that, it won't end with just taking, say, a holiday home that's unused. See, one of the problems is these houses are empty or in places that no one wants to live, like Roscommon, or their holiday homes. People who are just arrived in the country want to live in where there's towns and shops and everything. And so this is a huge problem. And the empty properties are in the middle of nowhere. No one wants to live in them. Or their holiday homes are not practical for a life, living your life. There's no shops nearby or anything like that. They're in the middle of nowhere. And so Boyd Barrett but they won't stop. That will fail. He knows that. What he's really after is that, like, the Shenchov family from Uganda, dog is rat, will live upstairs in your house, and you will continue to pay your mortgage while living downstairs. And to implement the 1939 Emergency Powers Act in Ireland was implemented because a young nation was basically potentially at war with the Third Reich and the Allies at the same time. We didn't know who was going to invade Ireland first, Winston Churchill or Adolf Hitler. It could have went either way. And the Emergency Powers Act were implemented because that was the danger the country was under. Literally, who was going to come in? The Hitler stormtroopers or the British Empire are going to come back and take over the country. And that's why that act was implemented. The country was literally, friendless and in grave danger, and had to maintain neutrality at any cost to avoid mass bloodshed. And he wants that law passed because of a few thousand Ukrainian refugees. Half of them are dog is rat. That's how you have no friends in politics, none. You have no friends in government. They're all out to kill you, to take your home off you, and to screw or slew your kids. And that's what they want. And the sooner you realize that and you decouple from the system and enter a parallel existence, and a big part of that, like I said, is not only turning off your television and not watching the evening news, or at least, I see it comes up on my news feeds, but I don't even have it. I haven't had television in 20 years. But these things do pop up and you do see them. Just look at them with a total sense of neutrality, and then get on with your life. Start working on your own parallel existence. And a big part of that also is just like ignoring normies. Now, by ignoring normies, I don't mean that being a snob and turning your nose up at them, but you literally cannot make conversation with these people in your lunch breaks and things like that, a small talk, because they're so completely programmed. And the best way to do that is not socialize with them. So, the best thing is to look for people who are like you, even if they're online. And look, even if you only have one friend online, it's better than a family made up of 50 normies. And going to family events and having to deal with that when you're in a different level of consciousness than they are. It's soul destroying. And that's why a lot of people don't go to family weddings. See, the family is not just falling apart because of the establishment, the globalists are wrecking the family. The families are also falling apart because many of us who are woken up just can't deal with it anymore. I can't go out and my own mates from the pub. I can't deal with it. I can't talk to them. And I don't want to get into arguments. So I'd rather have one friend online than the other side of the world is worth 1,000 of them. And that's what's happening too. The tribes are forming on their own osmosis. So, again, this is not, we're in a positive phase now. Woke is destroying itself, and the only thing I'm concerned about is is Clinton. If if she absorbs herself into Harris, in time, she could really cause it. And remember, the Clinton wouldn't live with them. And I don't mean that literally, though it could be. It could be like an MK Ultra thing. And Kamala Harris as being. I remember David Shaler. David Shaler was the MI5 agent who was, fucked over by MI5 for being a whistleblower. David Shaler was a real whistleblower, by the way, not Edward Snowden, for God's sake. Anyone who still thinks that he was invented for the Occupy lunatics, but the Occupy normies. But they'll do anything to you. And Kamala Harris is probably lying in bed at night, and she's probably being bombarded with waves saying, it's turning her into Hillary Clinton, an MK Ultra kind of thing. We just don't know. But it could be like literal as well. So, I wouldn't put anything past these. Look, everything is open now. You never thought you'd believe in this. You'd land on a planet that was like this, so you're open to everything. But, what we had, we held during the Rona phase, and what we had, we'll hold during this. We'll hold. And that's okay. We will be fine. The thing is to observe these things. It's good to be even fascinated by them, because that's the cauldron of creativity. You should be very, very creative at the moment, and have a non-attachment to fixity of purpose. So, for instance, like you're going to get on with your life. You're going to live your life. You're going to enjoy your life, but you also are aware that the aliens from a quiet place, in the guise of SJW, wokies, progressive, cancel culture types, they're all around you everywhere. And the best thing to do is to navigate your path to safety, and then starve those motherfuckers off the face of the earth. Sanguine Gnosis, love you all.